Hey everybody, it's Donna. This is my presentation on the brain, why mistakes are beneficial, and how they can help us with our learning. I thought it would be good to start with a little doodle of the brain so that we can see what we're looking at, see what we're talking about, and have a more concrete idea of the concepts we're about to discuss. The brain is the hub for our nervous system. Our nervous system is where we think, feel, have emotions, have senses, and remember. The brain is also where learning occurs, which is a very important piece of what we're going to talk about today. When a new thought or a new idea is presented to our brain, what happens next? We take it into our brain, but where does it go from there? Does it become a piece of our brain, or does it just scramble around aimlessly? And how does an idea or a thought become knowledge? To understand this, let's talk about synapses, what they are, what they do, and why they're important. In the human brain, there are over 125 trillion synapses. A synapse, also called a neural junction, is the part of the brain where connections are made and used. Things in the world around us, like things we see, hear, or read, go through the brain using the synapses as a type of bridge. But where can new information go if there's not already a bridge built to cross? Think of background knowledge like an outlet. Think of new knowledge or new ideas like a plug. They fit together just fine, but how can you get them to go together? The answer is actually more simple than you might think. To connect background knowledge or context and new learning or new information, you really only need one thing, and that thing is experience. Learning can only come from trying, and whether you succeed or not, you still learn. Still a little lost? Let's think about an example of a real-world situation where a new synapse is formed through experience. Let's imagine a stove. As an adult, you know not to touch a stove when it's turned on. But how did you learn that? The most likely way you learn not to touch a hot stove is unfortunately by touching a hot stove. And yes, it hurt your hand, but you learned. Your nerves felt the hot stove and through synapses told your other nerves about it. Your brain learns, ouch, this is hot, this hurts. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Then your synapses build a bridge that can help your brain remember, hey, this is hot, we don't want to touch it. Now you've learned. This bridge is a metaphor for knowledge. Now, instead of touching the stove to feel if it's hot, you'll see that it's hot and you won't touch it. Now, it's time to talk about mistakes and how they help us learn. Oh, mistakes. We all make them, and we all make a lot of them. But are they really all that bad? One of the most important things for learners to keep in mind as they go about their journey for new knowledge is that everybody makes mistakes. I remember in my second grade classroom, my teacher spelled something wrong, and I was in shock. I didn't know adults could make mistakes. In our society, mistakes are viewed as something negative, something to avoid, something shameful or embarrassing, instead of a learning experience, which is what it truly is. Imagine if you'd never touched the hot stove. If you never make a mistake, you never experience what's the wrong answer, and it'll be harder to find the right answer. As educators, it's so important for us to really drive home the idea that mistakes are great. Mistakes are experience, and they can be learned from. Knowledge doesn't just appear. Bridges don't build themselves. To learn and to grow, you need to experience and make mistakes. Let's revisit that hot stove. Now, you and I both know that you don't want to touch it. But how do you know that? Because you've already done it. You've already made the mistake, and you've already learned. With the knowledge that it will burn you, how do you react when you're presented with a hot stovetop? Your brain recognizes the situation as something that hurt you before, and so your don't touch bridge will pop up again. So when you find yourself in this specific situation again, your brain remembers what happened last time and knows not to do it again. To put it simply, if you live a life in which you make no mistakes, you live a life in which you do not learn. Now, let's take a look at the brain as a whole again and think about how mistakes travel through the brain and become knowledge. Here's your brain, again, and here's your brain encountering a mistake. Now remember, this is not a bad thing. The mistake, as an experience, travels through our brains using the bridges we've created with our synapses and creating new bridges along the way. If a mistake we make is unfamiliar to us and there's no bridge already made, our synapses can create a new bridge to help us understand what we've just experienced. A brain that has made a whole lot of mistakes has a whole lot of bridges, and your thoughts and ideas can use these bridges to connect to your previous knowledge. To be knowledgeable and to be strong learners, we need these bridges, as many of them as we can get, and mistakes are the pathway to building these new bridges. Recognizing mistakes for what they truly are, which is an opportunity to learn and grow, can help foster resilient learners who never give up. Now, let's put all that we've just learned together. As a whole, the sum of one learner's knowledge can be likened to a brick wall. Brick walls can be added to, subtracted to, taken down, or expanded at any time. The learner is like a little construction worker, and it's important to be wary of mistakes and keep your hard hat on, but it's also essential to be ready to make mistakes, because mistakes are the building block of our knowledge. By combining mistakes we've made with background knowledge, we can build up a sufficient wall of learning.